everyone. It's great to be able to talk with you all today. I'm going to speak about why we need to take heed of the suffragette motto, deeds not words, and take real action now to build gender-balanced businesses. Let's start with reflecting on International Women's Day last week. We saw thousands of social media posts celebrating how wonderful women are, so it would be easy to miss the real point of the day. It's actually to remind us of the huge disadvantages women have versus men with regards to safety from violence, political representation, health interventions, and financial security. Studies suggest it will take over 200 years for women to achieve economic parity with men. This shocking figure mobilised me to accelerate the pace of adoption of gender balance because, as well as improving business profitability, it will also improve women's equality, social mobility, and our society as a whole. Having spent my career in the automotive sector, I chose to take action in the place where I could best influence change. I founded the Automotive 30% Club, a network of over 40 CEOs and MDs, to significantly grow the female representation in the sector by filling 30% of key leadership roles with diverse women by 2030. I believe the seismic shift caused by the rapid adoption of digitalisation and remote working, accelerated by the pandemic, will enable our inclusive organisations to reach this target earlier and may lead to gender parity, at least in many key roles, by 2030. So I'm going to run through the key issues surrounding gender balance and how to take action, as outlined in my book, Change the Game, The Leader's Roadmap to a Winning Gender Balanced Business. I'll provide evidence to support the business case for creating gender balanced teams, and I urge you to act now, because inclusive organisations are best equipped to manage the business transformation needed to weather the impact of the current multiple external crises. Businesses with an inclusive culture and a better gender balance are more profitable. A McKinsey study of 1,000 firms identified that those with a higher representation of women in top roles were 25% more likely than their peers to have above average profitability, and that rose to 36% if their leadership team was diverse. It's not about a battle of the sexes, but an understanding of the benefits of balanced, diverse men and women working together to achieve better results due to the different but complementary qualities and perspectives they bring, combined together to make better decisions. This leads to improved customer insight and orientation, increased productivity and innovation, and the ability to attract talented people who want to work in such vibrant cultures. It's also because access to a large gender-balanced pool of top performers puts a stop to the practice of over-promoting mediocre white men, and a reduction in management mediocrity leads to an improvement in profits. Companies that have prioritised inclusive values can attract investment because they deliver increased shareholder value. So it's evident that gender balance and inclusion makes sense. However, it's likely that there'll be resistance to the necessary change. It's most likely to come from a small number of men who are accustomed to having a position of privilege and have enjoyed an unfair advantage. That means they may view attempts to remove the unfair advantage they have as actually unfair to them. Equality will feel uncomfortable for those who once benefited from inequality. Men and women must understand that the culture change will benefit all. It's about scouting for and putting together the best complementary talents to form a high-performing team. It's about acknowledging that the reason the team hasn't had gender parity historically isn't that there aren't any capable women, but that organisations have been designed to fit around prejudices that are invisible, pervasive, and endemic in the system. As in any cultural change programme, it's necessary to thaw the current norms and expectations and refreeze them into the new inclusive shape of your business. To do this, you must inspire your team with motivating stories, identify objections and overcome them by informing them of the evidence, include your team in reforming your processes and policies so that they take ownership, and identify champions and change agents at all levels. It's useful to develop an inspirational 5-minute talk that describes why you're making the changes and what the benefits will be. It's a great way to distill the key points into a motivating pitch and will describe the norms that you'll establish for your inclusive team. It's also important to have a set of anecdotes or stories to help explain some of the more complex issues and inform your colleagues of the facts. To successfully build inclusive teams, you must inspire and inform your people and reform your culture. You must encourage openness and curiosity, because there's a tendency to reject information that doesn't fit with our personal experiences or react defensively and shut it down, while on the other hand, there's a failure to challenge information that does correspond with our beliefs. So you must make your team aware of this risk of unbalanced processing. And the new cultural norm must be to approach new alternative ways of working and inclusive protocols with openness and curiosity rather than closed thinking. We can encourage people to support an inclusive culture by drawing upon nudge theory. It suggests most people are conditionally cooperative in order to avoid being different to the norm. Generally, people want to run with the herd. People are more likely to adopt behavior if they know that most others are already doing it. So avoid bombarding your team with information about how endemic sexism is. Instead, publicize the commitments to gender balance made by the growing number of inclusive leaders and share the progress many firms are making. You must make visible the women in key roles to demonstrate that female leaders are not an anomaly. Focus on those in your team who are doing it right so that others feel peer pressure to conform to that norm and name and fame them. Business leaders who have instigated change in their companies will be aware that it's often experienced as threatening, and so resistance is both understandable and normal. Everyone will be approaching this from a different starting point, depending on family background, values, beliefs, and social programming. You'll probably never change their innate beliefs, and nor should you make it your mission to do so. However, you should make it clear what the expected behavior is and that the company has values of dignity and respect. People should feel safe to express their concerns, and if they feel threatened by the new norms, they should be listened to and reasoned with, and reassured that those who adopt inclusive practices have nothing to fear. Gender equality is not a zero-sum game. If a woman wins, it doesn't mean that a man needs to lose. If only one side wins, it creates a dent in the relationships and the culture won't be inclusive. You need to cultivate an abundance mindset in your team rather than a scarcity mindset. The scarcity mindset sees a limited availability of everything, so the person feels they have to get the most they can out of scarce resources. An abundancy mindset sees that collaboration amongst people achieves more success for everyone, and that defining everything as a competition that must be won means someone unnecessarily loses. Those with a scarcity mindset who have been waiting for senior roles will not want new competition from diverse women. They may see their slice of the top management pie getting smaller. People who benefit from existing practices and norms may resist when their advantage disappears. The fixed pie mentality is a known barrier to creative problem solving, effective decision making, and teamwork, because competition becomes focused internally within the company instead of externally. If people feel threatened by internal competition and new entrants, they'll be less welcoming. Everyone wins when the company is more successful, jobs are secure, and rewards are high. If we all work together, we all win, but if we don't, we all lose. Women's employment rates are higher in contexts where men are more confident in their own security and ability, and have a more favourable view of competition for women as equals, and understand how a gender balance leads to better business performance. And even an improvement in their own performance as they up their game. Storytelling is an effective way to help people to understand complex issues, and here are the 3 useful points that you can use to inform your colleagues. The first is, women are not a minority. It's important not to subjugate female representation under the banner of a diversity initiative. To see it as existing within diversity is wrong, because it takes the viewpoint that the non-diverse person is the white man, and everyone else, including all types of women, are simply a deviation from that white male standard. Women are the majority of the population and arguably the biggest consumer market. There are more white women than there are white men. Diversity is therefore what we must seek within both women and men we employ. If we lose the focus on sex and gender as a starting point, it minimizes the importance of ending bias against more than half of the population, frames white women as a minority group, and diminishes the likelihood of recognizing additional barriers faced by women of color through intersectionality. A Black woman's barriers to progression are different to a Black man's, and also very different to a white or Asian woman's. Don't assume that everyone who's not a white man will benefit from a standard program of activities under a single diversity banner. There's a risk that although we may make great strides to address diversity, if we don't tackle gender balance challenges, the majority of the diverse employees will still be men. The second is the difference between equity and equality. Many organizations mistake equality for equity. Both promote fairness, but equality treats everyone in the same manner, regardless of need, whereas equity treats individuals differently according to their need. Proudly claiming that employers will have the same opportunities, irrespective of gender or colour, simply doesn't recognise the inequities that exist that prevent many of them accessing those opportunities. This fallacy of fairness exists in many companies. A great way of illustrating this is the cartoon that depicts three people standing on small boxes to reach an apple on a tree. One person is tall, one is average height, the other is small. The boxes are all the same size, so despite all standing on a box, only the tallest can pick the apple. This represents equality. The boxes they stand on are equal, yet due to the height advantage of the tallest, he's the only one that benefits. In the next cartoon, the three are standing on different size boxes. The smallest person has the tallest box, the average height person has a middle-sized box, and the tallest person stands on the small box. This represents equity. They have a different box according to their need. All can now comfortably reach the apple or reach their career potential. The tallest had an unfair advantage that was removed, but is definitely not now disadvantaged because he can still pick the apple. As an employer, you can immediately see the benefit of having all three employees reaching the same high performance level than just one. Unfortunately, the tallest person will sometimes feel the ability to reach that level is a competitive advantage that he is entitled to, and resist actions that give the others a chance to overcome the disadvantage that is through no fault of their own. It suits him for you to only have a pool of one to choose from. The difference between equity and equality is an important one. To create an inclusive organisation, there must be a collective recognition that people need equitable rather than simply equal treatment in order to overcome unfair disadvantage. And finally, the littering story. Sometimes sexist and racist behaviour takes the form of microaggressions, which on the face of it seem relatively insignificant as individual instances, but accumulate over time to become a toxic culture. The writer and consultant John Amaechi uses the analogy of littering to describe how microaggressions need to be picked up, just as with each piece of litter. Otherwise, if no action is taken against littering, everyone starts to see it as acceptable behaviour and we all do it. No one feels it's their responsibility to pick up the litter. They all follow the norms of the herd. Then suddenly someone new comes into the workplace and all they can see is everyone wading through the rubbish and no one doing anything about it. All they can see is the everyday sexism, the comments about appearance, offensive jokes, the ridiculing, the patronising tone, and the inappropriate touching or space invading. It must be made clear to everyone that it's their responsibility not to say or do sexist things, and if anyone they see doing it must be called out before it becomes the norm. The litter must be immediately picked up. The victim should never have to be the one that does that. I'm now going to outline a simple route map to building a winning gender balanced business in the form of 6 steps to success. Step 1 is know your data and be accountable for progress. Before you set off on your journey to achieve a gender balanced business, you must know your starting point and collect your female representation data. You must then create a plan with a specific target to ensure you reach your goals in full knowledge that what doesn't get measured can't be fixed. You must hold senior management to account for delivering the objective and also allocate a realistic budget. Step 2 is reach out to new talent pools and find new sources of skills. Businesses are competing in a race for skills and must plan for the future as well as fill vacancies today. You should identify the skills you need for future business transformation and update job roles and person specifications to reflect this, ensuring that the criteria are not stereotypically male traits and also will not limit the number of female applicants. Then identify the potential sources of diverse women with these skills, both internal and external, and consider transferable skills from other departments or sectors. Reach out to women at the start of their career, as well as those already in leadership roles. Step 3 is recalibrate for inclusion and design for productivity, not presenteeism. If you don't ensure the organisation is designed to focus on productivity and outputs rather than presenteeism, and ensure women are not excluded from participation, very little progress will be made in terms of retaining and promoting them. Organisational structures, jobs, policies and processes must be consciously designed for inclusion, and working norms must drive inclusive behaviour. You must review your facilities and conditions and examine your work norms and reward productivity rather than presenteeism. Work must be repositioned to be what we do, not where we go. Step 4 is welcoming the women and recruit equitably. Scrutinise your recruitment and selection processes and monitor success rates by gender and ethnicity at each stage to ensure there's no bias built into a particular step. Examine your job descriptions and adverts to make sure they don't accidentally alienate your ideal candidates, and promote your vacancies where women will actually see them, including those who are not actively job seeking. Have gender balanced shortlists and hide gender and ethnicity cues from application screeners. Design induction programs to make women feel welcome, particularly if they are trailblazing by entering an environment with few female colleagues. Be transparent about pay, because women are less likely to apply for a role where the salary isn't clear. Step 5 is pull women through the pipeline and promote proportionately. This will mean redesigning work allocation and promotion processes to remove subjectivity where bias could creep in. In order to ensure your gender balance improves in the higher levels, make sure you promote proportionately. For example, if your entry level is 50% female and 50% male, but your promotions to first level of management are 25% female, 75% male, then you have a problem somewhere in your processes or promotion criteria. To promote proportionately, you must have effective succession planning processes, official sponsoring and mentoring programs, and ensure you ask women who meet the criteria to apply for promotion. There's strong evidence that women's networks and conferences with the goal of inspiring, developing, and supporting women have a significant positive impact on women's progression. Step 6 is hold on to your investment and maintain the balance. Make sure you don't lose women before you get the return on your investment. Study your people analytics to establish not only actual overall male and female turnover rates in your business, but also where specifically the differences might be happening. Is it in the lower levels, or in certain teams, or in particular jobs? If the data shows a disproportionate number of female or ethnic minority employees are leaving, then there's a problem. Don't put women returners in the career slow lane with pay-protected demotions or sideways moves to less important roles. This is a discriminatory practice that happens in many organisations because false assumptions are made about the woman. This is often linked to returning on a flexible working pattern. The company creates a discriminatory situation by only allowing certain less important roles to be done flexibly, so the woman returner is forced to go into a slow lane job. Another reason women might leave is that the more successful they become, the less liked they are by both men and women. Success and popularity are positively correlated for men, yet negatively correlated for women. This impacts on peer reviews, promotion, and popularity of senior women, and can ultimately lead to their exit. There's a correlation also between sexist behaviour and inequality in the culture of an organisation, with companies with a high gender pay gap and the underrepresentation of women in leadership roles having larger numbers of women suffering from sexual harassment. A BBC Radio 5 Live poll in 2017 found that 53% of women had experienced sexual harassment at work or a place of study, and 1 in 10 of those had who had been harassed said they'd been sexually assaulted. Those who stay and endure it may suffer damage to their mental and physical health and are unlikely to perform to their potential or progress within careers. Women who have suffered workplace abuse describe changing their behaviour as a result, wearing different clothes, shoes they could run away in, and missing breaks to avoid sitting with male colleagues passing around pornographic images on their phones. Put a stop to the behaviour that stops women progressing or forces them to leave. The way to do this is to first demonstrate what professional behaviour in the workplace looks like, with the top team leading by example and reinforcing expectations. Then show zero tolerance for transgressions from the minority who are the perpetrators. It's important for you to be aware that by being an inclusive leader, advocating for gender balance and diversity, and creating an environment in which women will thrive in order to get business success, you're also doing just what society needs. You will inspire the next generation by implementing outreach programs to help youngsters in schools to overcome gender stereotypes, and this will have a hugely positive impact on their future lives if they're free from the shackles of restrictive gender norms. We can all identify a person who inspired us in our formative years and helped us to choose a career or lifestyle or adopt a certain set of personal values. Be that person for one of those youngsters today. You'll also help more women to fulfill their career potential. By recruiting, promoting, and retaining more women in your organization, you'll be helping hundreds and maybe thousands of women to prove their abilities, value, and reach their career potential and fulfill their ambitions. The actions you put in place to eliminate discrimination and remove barriers to progression will have a lasting positive impact on the lives of those women and their families. Each woman that rises through the ranks will in turn be a positive role model to other women and can lift others as she rises. More men will fulfill their carer potential. The anthropologist Margaret Mead said, "Every time we liberate a woman, we liberate a man," and I firmly believe that's true. Introducing paid, shared parental leave and increased paternity leave will enable more men to develop that all-important bond with their baby. By adopting contemporary working practices such as flexible, agile, and remote working and making them free of gendered associations, you'll be liberating men to spend more time with their families. Key studies of fathers around the world have found that fathers' involvement with their children and their learning is linked with positive educational outcomes, better mental health outcomes for fathers, and better educational emotional outcomes for children as a result of quality time spent together are without doubt hugely beneficial to society. More people will be treated equitably and with dignity, and by adopting an unequivocal anti-sexist, anti-racist, and anti-homophobia stance, you'll be sending a clear signal to your employees about what values and norms are acceptable, not only in your organisation, but also in wider society. If you eliminate harassment and hostility towards women, people of colour, and members of the LGBT+ community in your company, you'll be relieving the suffering of a large proportion of your workforce. This will undoubtedly have a positive knock-on effect on their families and the local communities of your employees. Generation Z is the first generation to see young white Western men and women rejecting racism, sexism, and homophobia on a scale never seen before. They want to live in a world where bigotry and intolerance are seen as norms of the past, not the present or future. They will be your employees, and by building an inclusive culture, you will help them to create a society where people are treated equitably and with dignity, irrespective of the colour of their skin, gender, or sexuality. So have I managed to convince you that building a gender-balanced, inclusive business is not only the right thing to do for your business, your customers, and your employees, it's also the right thing for society? Now you're aware that inequity, inequality, and exclusion really do exist, you might be thinking, so why doesn't someone do something about this? Well, that someone should be you. Perpetuating the status quo in your organisation and missing out on the benefits that an inclusive culture brings is not a wise thing to do. Doing nothing to change it is not really an option. With power comes responsibility to act. Leading such a radical business transformation by redesigning your organizational processes, systems, and protocols to suit the diverse 21st century worker of both sexes is truly game-changing. Identifying and upholding the social values that will make your company the one that people aspire to join and will thrive in will take you to the forefront of the next industrial revolution. Now more than ever, it's essential to tap into the potential profits that your company might be missing out on and act to build a winning, diverse, gender-balanced business. Those who fail to try will be settling for less and will be on the wrong side of history.